On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I discuss the many open questions on commission disclosures. Let's go.
This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
Hi, everybody. This is Greg, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to our newest sponsor, CoreLogic. There has never been a time when it's been more crucial for real estate agents to demonstrate their value to their clients. And CoreLogic has all the tools for them to do so. One Home has generated over 17 million unique users who are exploring listing and neighborhood data. Their invitation-only client portal has also amassed 2.3 billion listing views, and their new photo AI search helps turn clients' visual aspirations into reality. For agents on the go, there's MLS Touch, which is their top-rated real estate app in the App Store, which gives agents instant access to critical MLS data wherever they are, and also can be branded for collaboration as a client version. Next up is Realist. Realist gives agents expert level analysis of properties, which helps their clients make smarter decisions and also can help them with their lead generation efforts. All this is underpinned by Matrix, the industry's leading MLS system. Currently, CoreLogic is rolling out Matrix 12, which will have a brand new interface that works perfect for mobile and desktop. Lots of great stuff happening at CoreLogic. Don't forget an update from your favorite rep, whether that's Rick, Todd, Kim, Lauren, or the rest of the crew, or visit their website. You can look at the link in the show notes. My thanks again for CoreLogic for sponsoring Industry Relations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. I can't speak today. This is your co-host, the notorious Rob, and as always, my co-host, the fabulous Greg Robertson, everybody.
Hola, Rob.
Hola.
I got an update. I had a good gained week this week, or a loss.
All right.
So we're going to take off. I'm now, it was at 6.4 pounds lost.
All right.
I'm down to... Drum roll, please. 9.7.
9.7. Woo!
I don't know, man. Yeah, I had a 36-hour fast there because I had to have a procedure, which a lot of men my age have, and that required me not to eat for a while. So I think this is a little bit aggressive normally, but I'll take it. Hell.
All right. Congrats. What's your goal?
The doctor wants me to lose 50. So
50.
I mean,
okay. All right. So
5-0.
You're about 20% of the way there.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
we can get you there, bro. It's easy.
Okay, all right.
It's
easy. No, I think so far what I'm learning is don't eat. That's
yes. Okay, so maybe we should have like one of these like live shows we should do.
Okay.
Right. And then we could just share kind of our experience and then get people to share their experience with like weight loss and keto versus Mediterranean and intermittent fasting. And because, I don't know shit. I only know what worked for me and kind of my research. But,
well, you said you lost about 30 pounds, right?
I lost that. I went because I have a thyroid issue. Right. So I lost about 30 pounds in 2 months.
Wow. Geez.
And then, it was, I saw some pictures of myself back from like 2019, 2020. I'm like, wow.
Well, I've been tracking on an app since 2017. So what is that? That's 7 years. And I've been up. I haven't really gone up or down, about 7 pounds. Right. So I think that's a good thing overall. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to, if this keeps up, I'm about 3 pounds from being the lightest I've been in that 7-year period. So that'd be remarkable. So
well, fantastic, man. Yeah, it's fantastic. And as you mentioned, we'll piss off most of our female listeners because we have a much harder time losing weight than men.
And again, everybody, I mean, I've been, getting texts and emails, and I appreciate all the feedback and support, and also like tips. Right. They're a lot more in the IF world for sure. I think that's for sure. So far, that's what I'm getting is the most. Yeah. And
so of that procedure, did you get to have my favorite drug? Proferol or whatever?
No, I didn't do. They gave me the mix of the fentanyl, and I was out like a light, man.
They
was just
gave
like
fentanyl?
Fentanyl plus something else, and I was out. But I asked. I wanted like the propofol, whatever the hell it is. But no. I didn't get it. No.
So California medicine is fentanyl, huh?
Hey, whatever it was, it worked, man. I was out.
All right,
and and all clear. Just so everybody knows, it was a thing.
Wonderful.
See you in 10 years. So that was good.
Wonderful. All right, so it's not a see you in 10 years situation, I think, with what we're going to talk about, because as we now have learned from discourses on like Twitter and socials, it feels like our listeners are just as confused as we still are from our last episode.
Yeah.
And again, I appreciate Ed for coming on. I appreciate like spending time, but kind of like them. I think the best was a tweet from Melissa. It was like, I listened to the entire hour and a half, and I still don't know what to do. And I'm like,
I think it was an F-bomb dropped in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, we're kind of with you. We're like, we're not sure either. Like, I still don't quite understand. So you have the murder board.
Yeah. So
talk to us.
Yeah. So I what I think is here is what I'll get to is and what the problem is, there's a lot of work, a lot of, the letters are pretty close too. We got a CONCESSION, and then it's just these ones that are kind of different. Yeah. And what's happening, I'm hearing also, is like when MLSX are on stage and talk, they're actually, saying the other word instead of the other word, right? So it's problematic, and it all seems to be in this area right here, right? So because from here on, it's right. From here on, it's right. All good, Yeah. And like so, I mean, maybe that's part of it, but I seem to think you and I agree. I mean, putting a percentage or a number in a field is you're just, I think, poking the bear, right?
So relevant to that. Yeah, I got to share this. A listener / reader, after apparently is a member of the CRMLS.
Okay.
Went into the MLS, right, and ran a report on the concessions. And apparently this is very new, so it's not a whole lot of them. But of the ones that he or she sort of looked at, guess what numbers? Guess what was in the concessions field?
2.5.
Between 2.5 and 3%. No one's doing flat cash. No one's doing the text. Remarkable. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think it's still early. I think there's also like, and Ed, I think, alluded to this. There's some strategies about, I think people haven't figured out how to like, I'm sure there's, you and I both know a lot of agents are very creative on this thing. So there's going to be scripts and books written on how to use the concession field for your maximum value or something, right?
Sure. Sure. And I want to talk about that maybe a little bit later, but it was interesting because one of the things I kept trying to hammer Ed on, right, is I don't understand what is the value to put any number into concessions field, right?
Right.
And I think I said this, so I'm starting to mix up whether I wrote it in a post or if I said it during the podcast.
I know what you're saying.
Right, but like, I'm married to a recovering broker, right? And what she tells me is, listen, unless the listing says as is, everyone knows you're going to make requests.
Yeah. Right? Everything's negotiable.
Correct. Unless the listing clearly says, listen, handyman special, as is, be warned. We don't care if the foundation is crumbling and the roof is falling down. It's just being sold as is. Unless it says that every agent knows. Okay, we're going to look at it.
Yeah. And I think every agent knows. A lot of agents will still ask.
Right.
Well, yeah, can we get, how about 5,000 off, right? I mean, it's still going to happen, right? Yeah.
Right. I know it says as is, but, throw in the curtains, whatever, right? I mean, everyone knows this. Okay, so if the idea was, look, so concession is the seller offering the buyer money, which might include closing costs, which could include paying the buyer agent, right? Then even if you put nothing, if the MLS had no field, nothing, right? It just said, whatever, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1 million, like,
right.
No mention of concessions, nothing, right? If it just doesn't say sold as is, You would think that the buyer agent would be like, cool, we're going to make an offer. Here's the inspection report. We're going to need $10,000 for the roof. We're going to need $5,000 for mold mitigation. We're going to need $25,000 for my fee. So why have a field? And I don't know if did he give us a straight answer on that? Because at one point it was like, it was administrative, like, because we have to regulate.
Yeah, I think he was walking a fine line because, he is a general counsel for CRMLS and vice president there. So for him to give anything, it could be construed as like, okay, general counsel of CRMLS. So I get where he might have didn't want to, give a solid thing. But I think part of what he was saying is like, don't share commissions. Is if you really want to stay out of this thing, then don't do it. Right. But if you're going to do it, we're going to have to set up a mechanism for it. And this is going to be, and again, I always say this on this pod, to me, everything's software. You gotta launch with something. Let's put something out there and let's see what happens. Cause you don't know what you don't know. You don't know. It's the whole software thing, that analogy of, are the dogs going to eat it? Right. I mean, you can make dog food, but you're not a dog. How are you going to know if dogs are going to like it unless you feed dogs dog food and see if they like it, right? So you got to put it out there.
Okay. So, but here's where. So let's use a software analogy for a second. Mm-hmm. The difference is this: it's almost like if you're in the crypto world, which is software, right? You do certain things with your crypto tokens. The SEC is going to come after you, and you're now looking at like enormous fines and maybe jail time. So as a software developer, if the consequence of releasing the wrong software is you get $100 million fines and potential face jail time, you're not going to write that software until somebody tells you, here it's a box, right? Here's sort of the safe harbor, right? This is sort of a similar situation. Like, fine, it's software. You got to get it out there, but you got to have more of understanding. And so, going back to that, I think when Ed said, look, don't share commission. Right? You want a safe harbor? Don't share commission. Okay. The issue is there's a huge difference between sharing commission and offering concessions. Right?
Well, actually, it's only about 4 letters here.
Right? I know, right? But legally, I guess from Ed's point, if I understand what he was saying correctly, saying just don't share commission. Okay. You're not sharing commission. You are inducing your seller to make a preemptive offer of concession to the buyer, knowing that the buyer has signed a buyer agent's agreement that puts him on the hook to the buyer agent for 2.5%. So we're going to proactively and preemptively offer a concession of 2.5. You know what I mean? Like, it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost could be solved with like, hey, bring all offers. I mean, that's just say that, right?
Right.
I mean, and that kind of covers it. It's kind of a wink saying, yeah, I mean, every offer is going to be different in some way, right? It might be over, it might be under, it might be contingent, it might be the chandelier or whatever. Just, I mean, you're signaling, and we might have to pay the buyer broker, we might not. I mean, just send them all to me, right? I mean, I just, it's, I don't, again, we don't know. Wait, okay. So I wrote something here about this, right? And this was in the context of a blog post I read from Stratechery, Ben Thompson. And, the DOJ is going after everybody. They're going after Amazon, Microsoft, whatever. The latest is Adobe. Right. And, what their mad Adobe is their kind of deceptive practices on people signing up for their software. They think they're not being clear enough on their landing pages that when you pay for annual, you have to commit to the whole year. And if you try to cancel anything before that, you're still on the hook for everything. Now, the author looks at that, and all of us who are consumers on the internet, we know what the deal is. I mean, any smart person is going to go, yeah, I know, they might, what's going to happen when you commit to annual, you're getting a better price because you're committing to annual, right? So, but there were some things on the site that he pointed out were like, you have to go over the info button and hover over it, and then it shows, then it gets more descriptive. And what he was positing was this: it's like, I'm sure that the people that designed that landing pages were basically A/B testing it for everything. What was giving them the best conversion, right? And this probably came out as being the best way to convert those people to an annual contract. But did anybody stop to say, well, what's the right thing to do here? What is the right amount of disclosure we should give? Right. And it just seems like that got lost in this kind of, how can we get the best outcome? I mean, what is the moral obligation as a company that we have to do? And I thought to myself, okay, that's interesting for just on a vendor standpoint of a guy who's designed hundreds of those, I mean, over time. But it's also like, is there a thing where we can look at this in regard to commissions disclosures?
Right.
Forget all this rhetoric about concessions, and these are all tactics and things. But like, okay, what if we looked at from the situation of like, what is the right thing an agent, a broker should do in regard to disclosure for commissions? And then can we work backwards from that? Can we start at that, doing the right thing, and then figure out where brokers and agents and MLSs kind of come into that? And I don't know if there's an answer. I mean, Brad Nix, he gave me a link, and it's on Twitter, going back to a page he had talking about what their values are. And I thought that was really smart. But I mean, is there something there? I mean, is it something that we can kind of, without destroying the industry? I mean, it's a balance for sure, right? But is that a way forward?
It's a good question. Like I said, this is why we started with this. I have no idea. And that's one of the things. I mean, I have my opinions, but my opinions are not the same thing as facts of right. And this is one of the things that I'm now really getting. I don't want to say upset. Upset's the wrong word. I don't want to say obsessed. Concerned, right? The deadline for implementation is like August, right? And I think like the vast majority of brokers and agents out there still have no idea what to do. Right? And I'm not entirely sure why that is, right? Because there's a part of me that feels like, okay, well, this seems real easy, right? So let's go back to like a couple episodes ago. Like, it seems real easy. Offer compensation off the MLS.
Right.
And then concessions, like that's going to happen anyway, because the buyer agent, when they write the offer, they're going to go, we're going to want $5,000 for the roof, $2,000 for this, and $12,000 for my fee, which the Department of Justice said is 100% okay. Right. Like, keep in mind, the DOJ in that intervention, like, made it very clear, like, you can pay the buyer agent, right? They don't have a problem with the seller or whoever paying the buyer agent. They just want it as part of the offer, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, that seems pretty clear. So why is it so hard? Why is it so complicated? Right. Now, Ed's point, I think he did make a really valid point, which is don't do the sharing commissions, don't do the offer compensation off MLS. Because if you do, then from a business standpoint, right, as a listing broker, as a listing agent, you then have to go to the seller and say, the commission's going to be 6% or 5% because I'm going to share half of it, right? He said, I'm going to eat you for lunch because my commission is going to be 2.5%.
Right.
And you're double the cost, right? Maybe there's something to that. I'm not sure, right? And I'm not sure. So here's the next question I have. Okay, let's assume me, Kevin Sears, NAR's lawyers, right, are right, and you can offer compensation off the MLS. Okay, and you can publish it on your own website. Again, I've pointed out a number of times. Now there's a little bit of a question: is this in fact safe? It seems safe, but maybe not, because this is what we went through with Ed, right? 7 through 10, but the 13 is just guardrails. Okay, fine. But it seems like that's safe route. Okay. So now the scenario, some listing agent goes, talks to the seller, does the whole thing. Hey, listen, we're going to offer compensation, right? Because that's perfectly legal. It's allowed. We're just going to do it off the MLS. So the commission is going to be 5%. Okay, now you put it out there, publish it. The offer comes in and says, we want 2.5%, right? Paid by the seller.
Yeah.
Right. seller's like, listing agent, you're offering 2.5% compensation to this guy, right? So you're going to take care of this? Listing agent goes, absolutely. So now the contract is written, blah, 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 this and that, and the listing broker will pay the buyer broker 2.5%. Does anybody get in trouble?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's in the contract. Has anyone, do you know what I mean? Is there illegality? What happens then? Right? Conversely.
Well, this is, I mean, all these things are, this is why everybody gets frustrated.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So that's scenario one, right? And Ed says, don't share commission. So if you do that, you're busted, man. You're in trouble. Okay. Scenario two. Similar type setup. The listing agent goes, listen, my fee is 2.5%. So the commission is 2.5%, but we are going to offer put into the MLS concession field 2.5% to the buyer, because guess what? Every buyer now has to sign this buyer agents agreement that puts them on the hook for 2.5%. So we're going to publish this out to the MLS. Okay? Offer comes in, blah, blah, blah. Right. And in the offer, it says 2.5%. The seller goes, okay, I got to pay that. And the listing agent says, yep, you got to pay that now because, right, my commission, I'm not compensating. Okay. Is that okay? Because the end effect is the same.
Yeah.
For the seller, end effect is whatever the number is. I paid $50,000 total, right? 25 to my agent, 25 to the other agent. Whether I did it through compensation or I did it through concessions, the net economic effect is the same to me. So what's the difference? And no one knows. And that's why your murder board exists. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. Right. And so, you know, and somebody's going to bring that up, and hopefully it's not the DOJ, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, we're not attorneys and not your attorney, as you say, but
I'm not there.
I don't know what kind of advice forget about what's on the MLS and all this other kind of inside baseball stuff. Is when you're working with a buyer, get a buyer's agreement. Ask for what you want, what you feel your worth is. And if they sign it, that's good. And if you work with a seller that doesn't want to do that, you're going to have to negotiate, right? And sometimes that's going to work out and sometimes that's not. And there might be some uncomfortable conversations you're going to have with your buyer that, hey, he's not going to pay this. You wanted to pay this, or are you going to make me whole here as we discussed, or what, right? But I mean, hopefully if you've done your job and you've imparted amount of trust that they have in you, they're going to see that value and not even blink an eye, right? And we'll see how the market kind of behaves here. I mean, it's kind of like, listings are gold right now. So,
but what you said then leads to the other thing that I thought we might touch on, because I've been seeing this came up in a long comment thread on one of my posts, and I'm reading this I've heard this before, and I've seen this sort of in the socials, right? And this is the idea of renegotiating the buyer agency agreement.
Right. Yeah.
You've seen these tweets and threads, right? Okay.
Yeah. So what if the seller says 3, but yours is 2, right? Or 2.5, right?
Right. And I think the general setup goes something like this. Whatever the buyer agrees to is perfectly fine. So the buyer agency agreement is not required. So you go and sign some buyer agency agreement at whatever low entry cost of entry, right? $10. My fee will be $10. Okay. But then what you tell the buyers, listen, after we work for a while, right? We have built a relationship and a level of trust. We're going to redo this agreement to accurately reflect, right? And then if the seller's concession, if the offer is more than 2% or 2.5%, then we are going to sign a new buyer agency agreement before I submit the offer to the full amount so I could get paid. It's something like that. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen agreements where you could factor that into one agreement where the first 40 days is $10, the next 40 to whatever is this, and then the 60 to whatever is 3% or whatever, right? So you could kind of build that in. I'm not sure. Can you write an agreement that says 2.5 or highest offer?
No.
I mean,
it's very clear. In other words, one of the settlement terms is
that's right. It has to be very
It has to be specific, and that's the cap. Well, we're not talking about writing an agreement. We're talking about you write an agreement, you enter an agreement, and then you renegotiate the agreement.
Well, it's an agreement.
Client.
I mean, you could. I mean, depending on the agreement terms, if you could cancel an agreement, right? I mean, depending on the terms. So if
the parties agree to do whatever you want,
that's law, right? I mean, as far as I can enter agreement, I can get out of an agreement, and then I can write another agreement. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Again, there's going to be what's not wrong, but what is going to be a little bit tricky is why are we doing a new agreement? They offered 3, not the 2.5 we'd agreed with, and I'd like to get that money. Well, hold on. I mean, where's that money coming from? Well, your pocket.
Well, the seller is offering more, so therefore, right?
Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. So I'm actually writing something. It'll be live by the time this episode goes live. But when I'm looking through all that, I'm like, okay, yes, legally, you could kind of justify it. Kind of. In other words, like your vendor, say you enter a big enterprise deal, with some broker, some MLS, 3 years long, and the terms are this, right? A year in, both of you guys agree this contract's not working for whatever reason. The circumstances have changed that you're saying, let's renegotiate, redo the agreement. As long as you agree, right? You could write a new contract, just say, hey, old contract is now null and void. This new one supersedes it. You can do that. So legally speaking, as long as the buyer and the buyer agent agree, yeah, whatever, it goes. The issue that I have with it is there's a difference between upfront, you're talking to a potential client, right? And you're negotiating, here's what I charge. Because at that point, that buyer is not your client. You don't owe him any duties. Once he becomes your client, right? Unless you're doing the transaction broker thing that some states allow, if you're a fiduciary of that buyer,
fiduciary,
I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if you can go, listen, fiduciary, let's redo this deal so that I could get paid more, right? In fact, one of the scenarios I'm playing with is if the buyer comes to you and says, listen, I see that the seller's offering 3%. Our agreement's for 2. I want you to get paid more. Let's redo our agreement to be 3. My sense is as a fiduciary, you're supposed to say no.
Right.
Because you're supposed to look out what's in the best interest of the client, not yours. You're supposed to say, no, we agreed. I'm good with the 2% that we agreed to. Let's see if we can get the price knocked down 1%. I think that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Okay. But what if the buyer says to you, this has been taking longer than I thought. Sure. I know you put a lot of expenses out here, and this is going to afford the opportunity to, which we, I feel bad for how long it's been taking them these extra expenses. So I'm willing to, because I really love this house, go surrender that rest of it to you if you want to. Right. So, I mean, again, it's all gray. Yeah.
It's all in that scenario. I feel like then as fiduciary, you're supposed to say, no, let's see if we can knock 1% off this price. And the buyer goes, no, listen, I get it, but man, you really worked so hard for me. And this was a very difficult deal. And here's the thing, I don't have any cash, right? So if I had cash, I would just tip you. I would just write you a check to give you a gift of 10 grand. Thanks very much for your help. I don't have it, so I want it included in my mortgage. In other words, that buyer is fully informed consent.
Yeah.
Right? And you as a fiduciary have done your job. Like, no, I'm looking out for your best interest. I'm happy with the amount I negotiated, right? But the buyer says, no, I insist. It's fully informed. I think you've done an amazing job. Let's redo it so you can get paid 3%.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I feel like then everyone's done their part. Like you've delivered value. You have done your fiduciary duty. The buyer's being a good guy. It's like, listen, I know how much work this took. I want you to get paid. Okay, then who's harmed? Like, no one is harmed. Everything is fine. I'm saying if it's not that situation, though, I think even if the buyer says, let's rewrite this contract, you should be like, no. Right? That's how I feel. Like,
no, sure. I mean, are you tipping the dancer or not? Right. So you thought you were all in by getting the room, but now it's like they want a tip too. What the hell?
So I would love to hear from, because that's my read, but there is this thing going on in the industry that seems to suggest, and I don't know if it's coming from some coach somewhere, right? I don't know where this is coming from, this idea of, hey, just, negotiate an agreement because you need to, and then keep it low. And then once you are like, whatever, then you're going to go back to the buyer, but we need to redo our agreement. I'm like,
it is a variation of the pricing scenario where we'll undercut the price to get a lot of people to offer, and then it'll build it up, right? I mean, it's a little bit, except
that fiduciary duty. It kind of goes back to. It kind of goes back to, we might need a whole. So this is in context of the whole conversation we had with Ed about, look, the industry has done things this way for like 100 years, right? Like, we need some time to educate the industry, right? And that's my frustration. Is like, I don't think these rules, like people are going to offer compensation. They're going to play games with concessions field. Why? Because we've done it this way for 100 years, and it's going to take a lot longer for the industry to kind of turn over and start to realize, oh, okay, that's not how we're supposed to do it, right? So education is going to be a major problem.
It does remind me a little bit of some of the arguments made in the Nosevic case of like, constitutionally, how is the government going to like stop a seller from offering anything they want, right? I mean, this doesn't make any sense, right? I guess that's the same thing for a buyer, or a buyer, a buyer can like, why can't a buyer pay whatever he wants? Why does this have to be, the way it is, right? I mean, I guess somehow in somebody's mind, and I'd love to see the Venn diagram of how this kind of factors into steering, as you say, fiduciary responsibilities. And, again, like I said, doing the right thing too, right? So, I mean, there's got to be some intersect there of a way to do that. But again, I feel like we're not making things clearer for everybody, because
no, we are not.
They are not clear, right?
I wish we could.
We have to launch. This has to launch. We have to get a lot of people on this thing. And what happens in a product launch, and any launch, is like all of a sudden, really quickly, things start bubbling to the surface. And as you look around the whole thing, okay, this is a problem for everybody. They don't know how to go to settings. They don't know where the exit button. I mean, we need to get this out there, get in front of, start this in action and seeing where the problems are. We're right now, as we're all pontificating and predicting, and there's nothing like getting into the hands of the public and the agents to see what problems we're going to have. And I hope the government or anybody else kind of understands this. This has been going on, as you've said, for 100 years now, right? So this is going to take a little bit of while to kind of suss out and cull the bad things out of it too. So I don't, Melissa, I don't know what to say to you. I mean,
Melissa and the thousands like her.
And the thousands like her. I mean,
they're smart. Melissa's an attorney, yo.
Yeah, no, I know.
These are smart people. Who are like,
no, we want to help her, right? We want to help her.
I still don't. So, so let's leave this aspect of it with this. As far as I can tell, please go talk to your own attorneys. Please go call the legal hotline. Please go. Because I'm not your attorney, and I'm not really practicing, but just based on like what the past, whatever, seems to me that if you want to just do it the right thing and not get sued or whatever, right? The easiest thing is offer no concessions in advance, offer no compensation, right? Because that's what Ed Zorn said. Even though I think that's 100% allowed in the settlement agreement. But if you want to be 100% say, fine, offer nothing, and just go make your request in the
all
offer.
Offers are accepted. Will be accepted.
Right. Well, we'll consider all offers, right? And then go back to kind of that basic understanding. And when I talked about education, I feel like we might need another wave of education on like what fiduciary duty actually means, right? Because it seems to me a lot of agents, a lot of realtors have forgotten, or they never knew what that actually meant. Right? Yeah. So they're just going based on, I'm going to do this deal and then I'm going to renegotiate because that's smart business. Okay, it's smart business. Unfortunately, it's a breach of fiduciary duty.
Right.
So unless you're a transactional agent, you owe nobody no duty, in which case you can stop talking about this is my client. That is not a client. That is a customer. You know what I mean? Which is fine. There's nothing wrong. It's a legal business, but you can't do that if you're with a client, right? That might be something brokers need to do. That might be something coaches need to do. Maybe a re-education. The way I look at it is you do your fiduciary duty and then you don't offer compensation or concessions in advance, you're probably safe. That's how I look at it. That's probably the safest thing. In other words, here's the listing, submit all offers, submit your compensation request in the offer. My client, I will look at all the offers, we'll do the math, and we'll go, okay, this is the best one. It's asking for, I don't know, it's asking for 10% concessions, commission. But the offer is so much higher. You might have some issues between that buyer and the buyer agent, but that's not our problem. My job is to look out for your interests. We're going to take this offer. Done.
And then I would be also, just to add to that, be a wait and see. So let's flush this out, see what happens, and then keep abreast of what's the latest best practices, because you're going to be coming out pretty fast and furious after this launches. Yeah.
So before we leave this, because it did occur to me as we were talking, the settlement is very clear that you can make offers of compensation off of the MLS. I'm not sure that I remember a part of the settlement that says that you can make numerical offers of concession in the MLS. In other words, if anything is questionable under the settlement, it's a concessions field in the MLS. Whereas a compensation field off the MLS is almost like more protected because it's specific. Again, yes, it doesn't specifically
on your own listings.
No, but it says it's not violated by, so you need to go talk to some lawyers about that language games. But like, if you're going to put something in front of a jury, let's put it that. If you're going to put something in front of a jury, I feel like I have a much better chance saying, listen, jury, read this section. It says right here. I think most jurors would be like, yeah, that's allowed. Right? Whereas if you put it in the concessions field, like, you're not going to find anything in the settlement that talks about, and just put it in the concessions field. Like, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe we need to have Ed give us another opinion on this and tell us.
Well, I don't even know if he would have. It's so nebulous in a way. Yeah.
So it's just a couple of the random things that were like. So let me ask you a question, kind of related to concessions, the top row. Okay, in your opinion. And this is kind of going back to what Ed said about administrative and regulate, right? What do you think the MLS regulates when it comes to concessions? So let me.
No, yeah, I understand your question, right? Yeah. So let me just, for those that didn't listen to the last podcast, is like, let me give some context here. What you and others were saying, and not really you, but what has been like, why do you need a concessions field? Because they could just put it in the agent comments. And the feedback that Ed was giving us is that, putting it in the agent comments with all the other stuff that's in there, it's very hard to administer, as far as to regulate, as far as to manage, right? So by creating a separate field, right, we can manage it, right? And it'd be so more of an administrative thing. It's easier for us from an administrative standpoint to have a separate field on it, which totally makes sense. Get that? I understand that. Well, I mean,
that's what I'm wondering.
No, I think because anytime, like, you can either have a blob of this house is the greatest house in sliced bread and blah, blah, and then like in somewhere in between there, and we're going to offer or what we're going to offer. All offers will be considered up to $50,000. Having to go through and read all that from an administrative person, right? As to like, go to concessions, that's where that kind of information is going to be. Boom, boom, boom. I see that next, right? Or there's some AI or some sort of other things. So yeah, I do think I think from an administrative standpoint, yes, I think it would be faster. Yeah.
But that's kind of what I'm asking about, which is, okay, prior to all this, we're still in the compensation world, right? The pre-2019, whatever, before all, right? The issue was the MLS had a rule that said you must offer compensation, right? And if
they didn't have to administer anything.
Well, what I mean is there was a rule. The administration there's this rule, and as the MLS, I have to enforce that rule. So therefore, I needed a compensation field so I could see what you're offering, right? And then once you've offered it, you can't take it back. Like there's all these code of ethics provisions and all these other things, right? Again, pre-2019. So yes, I could see why in that case, in other words, to administer or regulate, there has to be a rule that you're regulating or administering. Now I'm like, what's the MLS rule that talks about concessions?
No, I think it's more of not what the rule is. I'm thinking that it's looking for them to, it's looking for them to guide people into to create a path for them. You were doing something along the side years, but like we're going to shift that and like it's not really. Let's like instead of calling it a commission, right? Let's call it a concession. And anything having to do with any monetary value should go in this field. We used to have it over here and over here. Now everything should just go here. It's just
again, it made sense with commissions.
The rule is you can't put commission. There's going to be no commission field, so you can't put any offer of compensation on the MLS.
No, I know,
right?
But you can put. I guess I'm just getting to. You have to have a concessions field because it's easier to regulate and administer. But I'm asking, what rule are you regulating? What rule are you enforcing?
I think
because
what
the MLS doesn't have a rule around concessions.
Right. So I think what you're regulating is that you've taken away the commission field. You therefore know that people are going to either put them either in the agent comments or the concession field, right?
Right.
And that this is going to help you manage that as far as to make sure that agents are putting them in the right place.
Why does the MLS need to manage anything? There's no rule. That's what I'm getting at, Greg.
The rule is you can't put commissions on the MLS. You can't share commissions on the MLS.
That. Right, they eliminated that, right? And the MLS has nothing to do with compensation. And by the way, the other rules are you can't.
And I think the rule is any offers of any concessions now have to be in the concession field, right? And we're going to move the concession field from only being at the end of a thing, because I think he said before it was only the sold listing would have concessions.
Sure.
We're now moving the concession to the active up front, and we want to make sure that you're accurately using the concession field as designed.
Okay, fine. So let me ask the question this way: as a listing agent, how do I violate the rule? How do I get in trouble for misusing the concessions field?
I mean, I guess can you explicitly say we're offering 2.5% of the sale price?
It's percentage or dollars, right?
Right.
So this is what I'm getting at. Like, okay, no, I get it, administrative wise, right? What I'm saying is, okay, as a listing agent, how do I violate whatever rule? How do I get in trouble for misusing that field? With commissions, it was very clear, right? If commission, I put 2.5%.
Okay.
And then didn't pay, then the MLS was, okay, you violated this rule. We're going to haul you up in front of the, right?
Here's how. So I don't know this, right? But this would be
we're all speculating. Yeah, we're all speculating right now.
I would say that because they're doing this, because they're moving it from the sold to the active, so it's going to be upfront now, concessions are. I'm sure that there are new guidelines about how you use the concession field. Right?
Guidelines from whom? The
MLS.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Hey, we're moving this to here to upfront, and here's some guidelines of using this field.
Okay.
Right. You can do this, but you can't do this, and you can't do that. I don't know what it is.
Right.
I don't have if it has to do with commissions, with percentages, or whatever. But I'm sure there are some guidelines and a rule that says you can only use the concession field for this, or it has to be laid out this way, or you can say this, you can say that, and that's why, and that therefore. What they're doing is administratively, they're making sure that people are following the new rules for the concession field. Boom.
Okay. The problem there is the concessions are not being made by the agent or the broker.
Well, then the agent and the broker have to educate their client. I'm like, you know what? We can't really say that. We can rather do that. I only can do A, B, C, and D according to the new rules.
We just spent a whole kinds of time saying the government can't tell the seller what they can and can't do because of constitutional right. And now we're saying the MLS can. It can't.
Well, I mean, you're not going to put in there like,
You can't. If the government can't prohibit the seller, then the MLS can't prohibit the seller, right? And the problem with concession is coming from the seller to the buyer. That's the buyer agent. So therefore, I'm like, I'm just wondering about what Ed said about this. It makes it easier for us to regulate and administer. I'm like, what are you regulating? What rule?
I think he's regulating the new rule. The new rule for the concession field being up front. I don't know what that is, but there's got to be something.
So this is one of those things I just like. I
things that make you go,
It's like, I get it that it makes it easier for you to administer, but what rule are you administering? Because there is no rule around concessions, and the MLS literally cannot make rules governing concessions because it involves the seller and the buyer, not the agent, not the two agents. It involves a seller and the buyer. Well, then you literally have no power to regulate or create rules that bind them. So what are you administering?
Yeah. Again, I don't know if there's a rule, a new guideline, I don't know what it says, but yeah.
Listen, any listener, if you want to come and tell me what rule the MLS is enforcing or administering, I'd love to know.
And it should be noted that not every MLS is doing this concession thing. There's some MLSs that are kind of not doing that and like just keeping a hands-off approach. No, we're not going to come up with a way of using another field to do this. It's off the MLS. Right. You can only talk about it. And so I think it's actually a good thing that there's several models going on. I mean, Northwest MLS is like, we're not even going to adhere to you. Right. You got MLS Penn that's got their own thing. You've got Bright and CRMLS that are doing, and other MLS is doing whatever. So it is. I mean, I think we're going to know a lot more, but unless we launch this thing, we're not going to know anything. So we just got to launch.
The thing, Matt, every MLS has to launch something by August.
Yeah.
We do know that. Right. Yeah. So fine. Like we don't know yet exactly the two.
It's going to be a shit show though. It is. Of course. Because agents,
Of course. And I'm like, I don't know, man. It just sucks. So maybe we need to, I don't know. Who please raise your hand. Send us an email if you really know.
Comment
and you want to come and talk about like, here's how you avoid liability. Here's how you should do it. Let us know. We might have you on the show.
Nobody wants to do that, right? Come on.
Oh man. All right. So like I said, I didn't think that we had a whole lot of like insights or wisdom to depart on this one because we're equally confused, I think is the answer.
Yeah.
We just have a lot of questions. I don't know that there are any answers. So that's what that is. In other sort of, speaking of administrative, let's do a little bit of administrative thing for us.
Okay.
Which is, we are thinking, and we would love your feedback on this.
Oh, please. This would be great. Yeah.
We are thinking of going much more to more of a live stream type of approach, as a show, because we've done it a couple of times and it's been pretty good, but we don't like let y'all know in advance enough to schedule it. Typically this podcast goes out Wednesdays. We're just thinking, what if we were to just do like a live stream, like on a Wednesday afternoon or whatever. So the questions for y'all that we would just love if you could just put in the comments or email us or text us, whatever. 1, do you like live streams? Do you think we should move to that? 2, if we did, what date and sort of time is ideal for something like that? Because we do want the advantage
middle of the week, end of the week, beginning of the week, right?
Correct. Because the advantage for us is it allows us to just engage with you all much more, right, than these pre-recorded shows. So we just want your feedback on it. I'm not saying we're going to only do that or anything. We just want to get an idea.
Yeah, and just to clarify also, if we do go to a live stream, it'll still be produced to be as a YouTube video and a podcast for your audio only listeners like me. I don't really watch any podcasts. I listen to them. So there would still be that. It'd be a little bit of a delay, but you have the option of either watching live or waiting for the podcast to be published.
Right.
So
you're such a boomer, Greg. You don't do YouTube videos. Anyway, with that, let's wrap here. Love your feedback. And once again, thanks to all of our listeners. Thanks to our sponsors. And thanks, Greg. Thanks,
man.
All right. Ciao, everyone.